So,
Great. Let's rock and roll. So we have David here somewhere. David, I don't think, if you just be kind enough to listen, I think now is an opportunity for people to weigh in and let us know how they feel about this draft to date. So we have, I thought we would actually start with Tim Piper and Karen Horn, and then go to Angela, and then Sarah and Wendy. Does that sound okay?
can I interrupt this? I'm sorry, wait a
Yeah.
second.
That's okay.
No, and I got my agenda screwed up. Okay, so I was looking at the wrong day. So we're on schedule. This is good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we're sort of on schedule. 9:45. We're not. It's not 9:45.
Says 10:10 on my schedule.
Oh, really? I guess I have an old one. Anyway, It doesn't matter. We are where we are. Here we are. Yep. So Tim, why don't you lead off with your input on this bill? Introduce yourself, who you represent, and take it away.
Thank you, Senator Clarkson. My name is Tim Piper, and I was formerly the president of the Vermont Inn and Bed and Breakfast Association that has since merged with the larger hotels, and I am now the co-chair for the Vermont Lodging Association. And before we get started, what I really want to do, I always want to do this every committee. I want to thank you all for, because of this pandemic, you've all become, tried to become experts in every industry that you're dealing with, and what the issue, no matter what side. So I truly appreciate that. In regards to the S79 VLA now, which is our organization, the Vermont Lodging Association, we fully support the S79 on the registration aspect of this bill. Senator Sorokin, you might not remember, but you and I had quite a few conversations 2-3 years ago back with the unlicensed short-term rentals. Our position has never changed with VLA. We're not against an issue with us.
Sorry, Tim, we've just lost you.
Back.
Tim, are you back? He was quite frozen for a moment. Nathan, is Tim coming back into the room?
I have not received any notification.
It says he's there. He's got a little square, but it's totally black. So if he isn't back in, there you are. Tim, are you back with us? You're frozen. Okay. I think we should, Tim, if you can hear us, I think we're going to move to Karen Horn until you come in on a stable connection. If you're muted, Tim, you're muted. You're muted. Are you back?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
You froze and then you disappeared.
Okay, well, I apologize. I'm not sure. It was a little unstable. So would you like me to continue, or do you want to go to Karen?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
No, continue.
All right. So with the registration, as I was saying to Senator Sorokin about 3 years ago when we were doing this, our whole challenge with this was that the unlicensed short-term rentals, we wanted a level playing field. This challenge has over the last 3 years matured in this challenge, in that 2-3 years ago, when that was a challenge that we were trying to understand a level playing field, that was getting mixed reviews. Subsequent to that, we've now seen that this challenge has become an affordable housing issue as well. And all of a sudden now the housing departments have started to take notice. And then thirdly, what has just happened, which both the governor's office has understood, is that because we don't have a registration in place, when the pandemic hit, and everybody was trying to do their part to keep the state safe, specifically our industry, which we knew we were taking the brunt of this by not having tourists come in. We were fine with that. We took the hit on that. But the challenge for the governor's office or anybody else, any of the departments, was there wasn't a way to get through to the unlicensed short-term rental owners, to go through all the communication that they were sending to us on how to handle pandemics and health and safety, et cetera. All of that was a large segment of potential people coming into the state that were totally not regulated. And so and there was this, and that was alarming to the governor's office as well. So by having the registration and having the departments of housing and fire safety and health and tax all on the same one, that is a tremendous improvement. We are excited about that. That's a tremendous improvement to have everybody literally on one page and not in their individual silos as in years past. And as a result of that, Senator Sorokin, if you remember, you were actually for a registry 2 or 3 years ago. And in doing this, because it never quite got to a point where we got to the registry, you had authorized, I think through the Travel and Tourism Department, a $50,000, $60,000 study to try and understand the size of this problem and what we're dealing with. What I believe is with S79, if you do this registration properly, you will have within 1 year a very specific data on what this challenge is all about. Now you're going to hear all kinds of sides on this, which is, oh, it's people just renting out one room and blah 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 to keep their mortgage, et cetera. We get that. And then you're going to hear the other side where it's multi-corporations from out of state and they're just bringing in and buying up all the housing, et cetera. I think if this registration is done correctly, you will then get a real sense as a state on the challenge and the problem that we have in front of us. For example, if that registration at the end of that year finds out that 30% are individual homeowners in the state and 70% are from out of state, that's going to be a lot different on how you handle this than if you find out that it's 75 or 80% of single family homeowners and only 20% from out of state. It just would help you to understand the total picture. So the registration, we believe 1,000% should happen. We suggest a couple of additions to your registration on that, which you're asking for the owner's name, the phone number, email address. Under the most recent one that I saw, and I might not have the right one, it said that you would get the owner's mailing address if available, okay? I strongly suggest that you get their full-time address, not a mailing address if available, because they could put in for example, somebody from Albany could put in a post office box in Vermont, and it's not giving you the true story of what's really going on. But by doing it that way, you have the full-time owner's mailing address. I think that's important. The second piece to this would be asking those owners how many operating units do they have within the state. And again, it's to understand, is it one person, or are they buying up 15 or 20 different houses and taking them out of the rental housing market, which is what has created the concern for the housing division. So by getting us to that point where we get this true registry that's that complete, in essence, we will get what you had authorized, I think, the Travel and Tourism Department to come up with a survey through Intertopia to try and understand what this problem is all about. We also believe that the unlicensed short-term, because now you will have this and all departments are on the same page with the registry, that the regulations, they should be regulation compliant for health and safety. I know fire safety, Mike had an issue with the fire safety. He had issues with certain parts of these places, but as he said, I don't have enough staff. I'm not in a position to go ahead and check on this, although I should. And your bill here is starting to account for that, which we also applaud. So in this process, as you go through it, if the other piece that we're going to recommend is that you have a certificate of insurance from all of these people. And this is something that I was found when I was the president of Vermont Inn and Bed and Breakfast Association. I was invited to speak to Airbnb owners. And I did one in Brattleboro, and I'll never forget it. There's 22 owners there that had Airbnb, and they also had average time that they've been renting their home was 1.5 years. And as I spoke about what was going on and the needs for insurance, it came to light that of the 22 people that had been renting for over 1.5 years, 18 of them did not have the proper insurance, and they had no idea. And they were held into a position where they could have lost everything. And they incorrectly thought that Airbnb had the insurance, et cetera. And they do for certain pieces, but they don't have it for neglect or anything like that, which they did not realize. And they thought their homeowners would cover it. Yes, Michael, certainly.
Michael,
So is there a requirement for bed and breakfast to have insurance, or is that just common business sense?
No, it's absolutely required. Yeah. I mean, no, you know.
all lodging establishments are required to have insurance, aren't they?
Yes, and again, and also, Senator Scirocco, the banks will not loan money without any insurance either. I mean, they just can't do it. So the point of that would be,
I understand that may be a practical. I'm just saying, where is the requirement for insurance on a small inn? Is that in the Department of Health regulations?
that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I could find that out for you.
Okay.
Great. We'd appreciate that. And Tim, we sadly have very short time on Friday. So I just want to leave room for everybody else to testify.
Okay, but one more thing, if I may.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
And then,
so the last thing is because you are getting these silos to talk together, which is health, fire safety, housing, and now the tax department, we would recommend that the tax department has an individual tax ID for every short-term, unlicensed short-term rental person. And the purpose of that is, again, what the tax department had said, we don't have enough staff to audit and blah, blah, blah for all these people. But now with this joint thing, you can actually get all of your staff to be working in concert. That's what we suggest.
thank you. Thank you. And if you get whatever else you have and to us in written testimony, that would be great. And if you get back to us on the insurance thing, and we can also find that out. Michael?
Senator Clarkson, I just want to say, in case any committee members are confused, I've asked Allison to run the committee on this issue. Not only we're both passionate about it, but she had much more optimism that we could get this done than I did. And I said, so go for it. So in case Keisha or Becca or Senator Brock are in any way confused why I'm being so not my usual loud self, that's the reason.
The vice chair is moving in here. And thank you very much, Tim. We really appreciate it. I think let's go to Karen Horn next. Karen, are you with us?
Yes, good morning. And
Good
thank
morning.
you for having me back. I'm Karen Horn with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And as I said, the last time you took up this bill, we're generally very supportive of this move of inspections of rental properties over to the Fire Safety Division. We agree that the rental housing registry is going to be very helpful. We haven't actually taken up the question of short-term rentals with respect to the rental housing registry, so I don't really have anything to say about that at this point, one way or the other. I did want to ask one question, and it's on page 19 of draft 1.1. And it looks like this was in here before, but a local health officer shall have authority to assist the Division of Fire Safety in inspecting rental housing. So, and then if the local health officer inspects a rental property without an inspector, he or she shall issue an inspection report. I'm just hoping that somewhere in the guidance, maybe from the Fire Safety Division, if not in the statute, it's clear that the Fire Safety Division has primary jurisdiction in rental housing inspections unless the town or retains the delegation of the program. And that may be a question for David, but, and it may all be in there, but when I was reading that particular paragraph, sub 5 on line 12,
Right. We have a question mark about that as well.
it was, yeah. So I think that that's our main question right now. And I know you're short of time, and if I can, unless there's questions, I'm happy to retire to my corner.
Yeah. David, do you have a thought on that? Because I had it as a question mark that we need to clarify. Sarah or Wendy, any thoughts on this?
From my perspective, and I'm not the lawyer, the intent is the fire safety would be the primary unless the town chooses under Chapter 18 to retain it. We did not want to eliminate the ability of a town to do an inspection if they chose to. So that's really the guidance. And, you know, what I think as a practical matter may happen is the town will get called about a complaint. They may send someone out and then call in fire safety. So we didn't want to diminish it in entirety because the town health officers will still be in effect to do other things. So that's the thinking. Wendy can elaborate.
Yeah, I would say another possibility is that there's a real emergency and fire safety can't get there and asks a town to do a preliminary inspection or something like that. But I would point to the transition provisions and specifically on page 23, once the department adopts any rules, I'm at the bottom of page 23, once they adopt rules, the department has the primary authority to enforce the state laws governing housing, health, and safety, and the local officials have concurrent authority. So I think that should answer the question that was raised.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Randy.
With respect to inspections under this statute that might be performed by local officers, is there any standard that's being applied so that the same standards are being applied from an inspection standpoint?
I think the fact that they have to do the same report basically does that, because there's a very prescribed form for doing the inspection report that sets out everything that has to be checked. And so they would be doing that. And that's what, for those who have been in the position in the past, that's what they're used to. The town health officers are used to.
It's a,
So it would
it's
be
a
the
60
same-
item
same-
thing and it still exists.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Karen, does that satisfy? Yeah, Karen.
Well, I do think that looking at that section that Wendy just referenced, I think it's somewhat confusing, and the Department of Public Safety and local officials have concurrent authorities. So the Fire Safety Division is primarily the agent that does the inspections. In a municipality where the authority's been delegated, the municipality is the primary, but in all these other towns, it seems to me that a local health officer might be thinking that he still needs to do all of this under, I think it's just a phrasing issue, but it seems to me that item sub B, public safety and local officials have concurrent authority, might be a little confusing after the transition.
So let's
But
work on Yeah,
is that they have primary authority. So
David.
Yes. So David Hall, Legislative Counsel, you'll see on, or I guess you won't see because I'm not sharing my screen, but referring to that same subsection within the transition provisions, once DPS adopts rules, DPS is the state government entity with primary authority to enforce state laws. And DPS and local officials have concurrent authority to enforce state and local laws. And that's intentional. It's always been written that way. And the reason is from the beginning, at least what I've always been told, is that the system will continue to function, from a statutory perspective, whereby there is currently concurrent authority shared between the Department of Health and local health officials. And this basically shifts the position of Department of Health and DPS, and is not intended to take authority away from local health boards and local health officials who have a broader scope of responsibility than just rental housing. But I was always told should continue to have that authority. I mean, under the new statutory regime governing DFS, if a municipality wants to take over and have their own program and system, then there is that process for DFS, to evaluate the program and the capability and to give approval for a municipality to operate its own system. But that's not the same thing as the scope of local health officials' current authority, which would be unchanged, and that is at the local level to be able to address public health hazards and public health risks. So, by giving DFS 5 new people and giving it the rest of the authority it needs to do the full spectrum of rental housing safety, it becomes, the statewide professionalized system people want to create in this bill, but it doesn't take away the concurrent authority which exists now for local officials. And if you want to change this bill so that it's a primary, secondary thing, then that is a different bill than what you have.
Karen?
I'm a bit confused. I thought that's what we were doing.
Wendy or Sarah?
Well, I mean, what we heard all along, and as I understand it, this concurrent authority is now in statute with fire safety. So, for example, forget the health code. The state takes primary and the town can step in as well with fire safety. This would just allow them to also step in on the health code. So we don't really see it different. That regime hasn't changed because it puts them as primary, the fire safety. We think that's adequate. And what we heard from towns is they would like the ability to step in if there's an emergency, if they choose to. They're not required to, it's if they choose to. I mean, a building burns down or is, some awful disaster happens, they can step in. And we've heard from towns that they don't want to do the primary inspection, but they don't want it taken away from them in entirety. And that is the way it is also now with fire. It's, I believe. So we don't see it as functioning any differently.
If there's further clarity we need, we can work on that in the next little bit. So I think this is noted. And anything else, Karen, that you want to identify that we need to further clarify?
No, thank you. That was the one concern I had.
Okay, great. So let's work on that, and we have time to do that. Angela.
My name is Angela Zakowski. I'm the director of the Vermont Landlords Association.
We can hardly hear you, Angela.
My goodness, what is going on?
I don't know. Maybe it's the changing your backdrop from the books to the mountains.
Is that better?
A little better.
Better. What is going on this morning?
I don't know.
I
But
had another meeting not that long ago,
And it was totally fine.
that's
fine.
better. That's much better.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So I'll start again now that we have our technical difficulties out of the way. My name is Angela Zaykowski, and I'm the director of the Vermont Landlords Association. Thank you for this opportunity to come talk about S79. I do support the transition of the inspection program from the town health officers to fire safety. I think we've heard a lot of testimony on the Rental Housing Advisory Board about the challenges facing the town health officer system, inspection system. I will note that what is not included in S79 is the Vermont Rental Housing Investment Program piece. And at least from my perspective, that is a critical component to making this a successful program. So if we're going to have more professional inspection and regulation, there has to be that support component for landlords who are struggling to make repairs and have improvements on their property. And so that rental housing investment program, which is present in the H256 version of the bill, I think is very critical for making this successful. And it creates that balance. So we're going to regulate landlords more, have more professional inspections, but we're going to provide some support for them,
Right.
some assistance to them.
That's the technical assistance that we've talked about, which has been so helpful, and that we did with CRF.
Exactly. And I think we have a lot of data from the CRF programs that show that when these programs work hand in hand and there's support for landlords along with the regulation, that everything is so much more successful.
Great. And do we, in H256, do we have a dollar amount associated with that?
So hang on, I wrote that one as well. I'm trying to think of what the funding is. Someone else may have their hands on it.
David can probably has that in 256, but that's an important point to, I think, I agree. And we can find that, Angela.
It looks like it was a $4 million appropriation.
The technical assistance?
No, it wasn't technical assistance. That's for the actual grants itself.
As I understand it, and David can correct, there's two pieces. One is the baseline for the rental rehab, which we've always supported. And then there's a one-time piece that's in there as well, and also includes homeownership.
Okay.
Maybe David can clarify which is which.
So we're looking at the total appropriation for the VHIP piece of this bill. David?
Sure, David Hall, Legislative Counsel. The House version of the bill includes both components of the administration's proposal, which is the VHIP renovation investment program component, and then also the homeownership revolving loan fund component. And that's what Josh spoke about yesterday. The House bill has $4 million total for those housing investment programs. It is divided $3 million for the rental housing investment and $1 million for the revolving loan fund. And that is the proposal as it came from the administration and is included in the House bill.
Thanks. That we had asked to have the appropriation for the VHIP, just the rental housing piece, added to this bill. Michael.
So I'm a little unclear, Angela, on you say that the money sort of goes hand in glove with the regulation. But isn't the money mostly for rehab that deals with uninhabited properties, like blighted, severely dilapidated, or is, I mean, I guess I'm a little unclear and fuzzy on, I see Sarah shaking her head. I mean, if somebody gets an order from the fire safety saying your water hookup is defective and you're in violation of this. Is there money going to help those repairs in this bill?
In 256, eligible units are ones that are non-code compliant. There is a component where they are vacant and or they are an accessory dwelling. So it's sort of covered a wider range. I would say with 256, I think there is an argument that some non-vacant units should be covered as well. I think we have seen success with the CRF funds in covering rehab to a point of both types of units. And, you know, we hear a lot about dilapidated housing stock in Vermont, and, you know, this is one way to help that.
Right.
With this investment into the community and into the housing stock, and have this resource for landlords. I think the other thing that we have seen through all of the CRF funding is that landlords aren't in that fantastic financial position that everybody assumes that they are in. They depend on rent money to pay their bills and to make investments in their property. And if they don't get rent money, they have a hard time even maintaining basic expenses around that property. And for many of them, even the monthly rent they get isn't enough to cover all of the carrying costs. So any additional help that can improve the housing stock in Vermont, I think, is a benefit.
Right.
And so if we're going to impose more regulation, we need to provide some assistance and some help for folks as well.
So I guess I was unaware of that. Can you explain to me in the existing CARES program, which is
Michael, we're having a hard time hearing you.
I guess I was unaware of that. So could you explain that in the existing CARES program or the past CARES program, how that worked? I mean, like a landlord has an obvious code violation that they're brought to their attention, say you need to fix this up. They just send the bill to the CARES people to pay for it?
No, there was an actual rehab program that's very similar to this housing investment program that landlords were able to apply in to have units rehabilitated. There was a component for the rental housing stabilization program. That was the back rent payment fund, where a landlord had to certify that a property was in compliance with code. And if there were issues, those had to be fixed before money was paid to the landlord.
Right.
And some of those properties in the rental assistance program did get referred to rehab. So, you know, there was sort of this cross.
But my understanding of the rehab program, I thought it was for dilapidated, blighted, uninhabited program things, but there were restrictions in terms of there had to be matching funds, there had to be rent stabilization. Is that what we're talking about? And is that what's in this bill as well?
In 250, 256?
No, it's in 79 in the VHIP piece of.
Well, 79 doesn't have the VHIP piece in it yet, but it will.
Yes, it does.
It does. It does now. This
So it-
version that we walked through yesterday does.
Okay, so that's.
It doesn't have the appropriation yet.
Right, okay. So essentially what you're talking about with the added regulation is the VHIP help in restoring homes, and they can be habitated, but it's for fixing code violations or substandard housing, and there are some restrictions in terms, it's just not absolutely free money. It's almost free, but you got to put 10% match down.
Nothing's free completely, but it is a grant that requires matching funds, and there are restrictions attached to it with regards to rental increases and a period of time and rental amounts that can be charged for those units.
Right. And it sounds like you're supportive of it as long as we continue the technical assistance for landlords.
Yes, I think
I
that's
don't,
correct.
I guess I'm not hearing that, Senator Clarkson. I think she's
Oh.
supportive of it as long as we can include the money for rehab, not just technical assistance, the actual money to pay the bill for the rehab. That's the primary concern that she has, not technical assistance.
I mean, I'm
So
happy
if you
for
have if you have a
both.
$10,000 bill,
Right.
I think the existing program, the two things I remember, a 10% match and a 5-year or something rent stabilization requirement.
Right.
That's what I think Angela's talking about. Not the I mean, technical assistance is nice, but it's not worth nearly as much as paying the bill.
Right. I would be happy with both, but my primary concern is the investment grants for the rehab itself,
Right.
for landlords to have access to money to take care of some of these issues.
Right. And that is not yet, the appropriation is not yet in the bill, but is my understanding is it's expected to be. Sarah, you had something you wanted to jump in?
Well, I just want to point out, effectively, again, it's always been in the bill. We had it in the last version too, which didn't get through. This version is based on, or the words are their actual DHCD's actual experience through the CARES money. They also had a pilot program in Bennington County with using some other CDBG money. So they based this program on 2 other programs where they've had practical experience. But the last version and this version as well has always had money. If you remember, the last version you passed had $1 million in it. It didn't pass, but there always was $1 million in it.
Right.
And this has more, as I understand it, a request for $1 million base program, and then in addition, some one-time money to kind of beef up things and get more housing online. And I think that the difference, Senator, is again, an earlier version, we were just focusing on vacant. We all decided that made no sense. And the focus is code compliant assistance to make it habitable under law, which means it's probably somebody's living in it, but there's code violations which technically would make it uninhabitable. So we don't want to force anybody to move. We want to get the unit fixed up. So it can do both.
So I don't want to take too much time here, Senator Clarkson, but can you, Sarah, work with Josh Hanford to give us a history of the money? Because my recollection is, and it could be wrong, that we had when it came out of the legislature, we had different parameters for this program. I think there was a 20% match, and somehow it got down to a 10% match. And I don't know what the rent stability is. I know we struggled to get money to the program, and then, like many other things, CARES came along, and all of a sudden $6 million was available for this program. And we didn't really get to decide what this program, which now looks like it's going to be an ongoing program, what this program is going to look like in terms of its details. We're just putting money out on the street and leaving it, in my mind, to the administration to decide how they want to spend it. So I would like to have our committee know the history, know how it worked, what the take-up rate was, whether we can make that money go further to more homes, or whether we've already hit the sweet spot before we just rubber stamp what the administration's putting in front of us, or what you're putting in front of us. So I don't want to take up too much time. So if someone can write a 2-page memo on the entire history of VHIP, that would be very helpful.
Great. Okay, Randy?
Is someone responding to Michael's comment? Let them go first, because I have a different subject to raise. If there's any other further response.
I think Sarah shook her head yes, so I'll take that as a yes.
Go for it.
I want to raise an issue that I raised again previously, and that is regarding confidentiality of personal information in the rental registry. And I'm interested in whether or not the Landlords Association has received any inquiries with regard to that. In particular, I'm concerned that the rental registry includes the landlord's phone number and it includes the landlord's email address. And these go beyond what is available publicly now in terms of things like the grand list, for example. And I take it one step further for David to take a look at what about the confidentiality that we provide for address confidentiality for victims of domestic violence, sexual abuse, or stalking. What we have is a situation here with the rental registry in which a person who may be such a victim, their address is now published, their phone number is published, and their email address would be published in the rental registry as we have it set up now. And the question is, what, if anything, how, if anything, that could be resolved relative to the protections that we already give domestic violence victims under 15 VSA 1152. Beyond that, there's the issue just of privacy of landlords. I know I myself would not particularly want, were I not in the legislature, to have my email address and my telephone number in something that is publicly released. And I'm wondering what public purpose. To have that available for the department doing the inspections, that's fine. But as a public document, I'm concerned about it. And I'm wondering if the Landlords Association has heard anything from their members regarding that.
Brock, thank you for the question. I have not, but I do understand that there is a distinction, and I don't think that it's quite as clearly identified in S79 between the information that is going to be collected and the information that would be publicly available on, say, a searchable website platform. And that's two different. What's identified in this bill is what's going to be collected. And I don't actually see anything in here that goes to what would then be published onto a searchable database. And I don't know that that had been looked at yet. And that was part of the discussions of the Rental Housing Advisory Board, is because there is data here that should not be out in the public purview that anybody just searching should have access to. And so those were part of the discussions. And I think maybe Sarah can weigh in a little bit more on that.
And I mean, they're just a clarity, because there are certain provisions in the Open Records Act already. And the only question that I've got is, do those provisions that would prevent the release of this information, is it clear enough in this particular bill that that kind of information would not be publicly available?
Sarah, you want to start that response?
To be honest, I don't think it is clear enough. I think we really focused on the data we need for governmental purposes, and all the reasons we've told you. There are a dozen towns in the state that have registries now, and I think during the break, we will do some research to see how they handle it. My understanding is none of those are in a searchable database, but I need to see what their ordinances say. So it's a fair question, and we will come back to you with a provision that speaks to what's public and what's asked for. Mr. Piper talked about a little more information to collect, and I think that's a very fair thing. We want management agents, we want real addresses, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to go out in a public database. It would be for the use of the department and its communication. So we'll provide you with something.
Thanks.
Tim? If I may just go on record, Senator Brock, under no circumstance do we believe in the Vermont Lodging Association that any of this should be public. We're excited about the registry. We're excited about the detail of the registry for the state government to use that through all four of those departments, but that they can use it, and absolutely that's its purpose. But it's not, under no circumstance do we want anything that should not be public out there. That's our position.
Well, I think it might be useful during this period if we ask Ledge Council to prepare some language that clarifies this as to what portions of this will not be publicly available.
That, I think that's what Sarah just said. It's during the
I
during the
realize
break, we will
gonna
work on
provide some-
language.
But I would also be comfortable having ledge counsel be working on this simultaneously.
Here. I don't know what David's availability is during the break, but we will find out. So I'm also cognizant of, at this point, Mr. Chair, we are at 11 o'clock pivoting to TIFs, our mini TIFs bill. Do we want to take a 5-minute break right now, or can we hear from Sarah and Wendy briefly?
I've already written Megan and shortened her time a little bit just to give us the briefest of updates from our last meeting. We're not doing anything and moving that bill forward today. So we can go to 11:05.
Okay.
Want to go at 11:15 back to David Hall. And I don't think there's a need for a break because we'll end at
Okay.
11:30.
Okay,
Okay.
great. And I do have some name ideas. I have 2 name ideas for that program. Sarah and Wendy, would you like to weigh in?
Well, I don't think there's more that I need to provide. We obviously are very concerned to get a working bill out of the committee. I think over the break, Wendy and I and David can work on whatever adjustments. So I'm really more curious if you've got questions. And, I've heard privacy, I've heard VHIP, I've heard a little suggestions on the detail of the registry. So we'll come back with some suggestions on those. And if there's anything else that the committee would like us to examine, I'd just like to know that.
Yeah, no, I think those are the 3 issues I've identified.
Yeah.
Further clarifying the concurrent authority piece.
Yeah.
The VLCT piece.
I do think, Sarah, that on this particular bill, it helps more than it hurts to drill down into the actual appropriations and positions. I
Okay.
don't know whether it's in the bill yet, but we should put it in the bill and we should have testimony on it, because I think even if appropriations strips it out, it'd be good for them to see upfront exactly what we need and talking about what we want.
I believe we've addressed that on the fire safety
Yeah, we have the
registry
appropriation.
side. So with VHIP, we'll have a conversation with DHCD and
Right.
on how they're intending to use the money.
Right.
I've sent you all a budget and you have it. If you've got specific questions on the budget of the fire safety / rental registry side, I can answer any of those, but that
Right.
hasn't changed.
And those are all in the bill at the moment. So
Yeah.
they're all there and have been as we have discussed them. But teasing out the 256 appropriation, the rental piece from the home ownership piece with the technical assistance, that is the key appropriation that we need to clarify for this bill.
Well, not exactly, because we're not putting in the home ownership piece in this
Right.
bill.
No, that's what I just said. I mean, we got to tease those apart and just do the rental piece for this bill.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I thought I was clear. Yeah.
That's what I understand, that you want to see just the rental program.
Right.
And its appropriation. And so we'll work on that. This is a more modest thing I wanted to mention, but in the DHCD commitments, there is a small amount of money from the fees that would support a program that Angela and Vermont tenants have worked on in the past. It's a landlord tenant education program, and it got defunded, and we want to see that continue as well.
And that is already in the appropriation.
It's already in the budget,
that's
yeah,
in
but I
this-
just wanted to point it out.
Right. Terrific. Thank you. Is there anything else? Any other questions before we continue this work during the break? Anything else we want to clarify? From Angela, Tim, Wendy, Sarah? Any committee members? Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tim, if you need any comments to get to us, or Angela, please be in touch. Anything further?
Absolutely will. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Mr. Chair,
Bye-bye.
So,
goodbye.
yeah, I think I'm just trying to check my email to Megan. I may have told her 11:05. Why don't we just assume that and take a 4-minute break here, okay?